again, that they would look forward to a long-term plan with regards to these performance measures. It's not just for the spring of 2021. So it's going to be somewhat of a long-term plan as far as making sure that, now we have to look at COVID-19 and some of the performance measures that are impacted from COVID-19. And so, again, being in very close contact with SCHEV, and as they've done for all institutions that didn't have fallen short with the performance measures, it had not impacted their certification.
Thanks, Dr. Palm. And I was going to say the same thing, is that SCHEV, it's nothing that they do with this is sort of rote or automatic. They look at the institutions, they talk to the institutions, they see what the institutions are doing. So in this instance, SCHEV is much more, they do everything possible to not punish in any way, if you will. It has been my experience previously. Mr. Worley, back to you.
Yes, two questions. One, Dr. Palm, you talked about projections and expectations, that we have to make sure we understand expectations, but isn't it the root cause here is a declining enrollment is
Yes.
a big part of this issue?
Yes.
And so to address this, then we're going to really have to be looking at our enrollment process. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. My next issue, Madam Chair, is how are we going to be, this committee will be monitoring the progress on this remediation plan to ensure that when we get to next year or the spring or whenever the time is, that we've addressed these things, these issues appropriately.
I'm sorry, you clicked out for me for a minute. I apologize.
I'll restate the question.
Okay.
How is this committee going to monitor this remediation plan to ensure that when we get to the end of this probation period, that these issues that we've been flagged for have been addressed appropriately?
Thank you. And obviously, and you sort of have to parse it out, because as Dr. Palm said, so much of what is apparent in these data, which resulted in the need to do a remediation plan, are already part of the strategic plan. And so if you note, we have enrollment and retention, and we don't have anything specifically on transfer students from the community colleges. But I think that has an item within the strategic plan. So we will, as a standing item going forward, include these and amend it to make an explicit reference to the remediation plan and updates in each of the meetings that we have between now and the summer. That would be the plan. If you have any suggestions for enhanced scrutiny, happy to do that. But Dr. Palm will be including that in the diligent books that you get prior to our meetings, and then we'll go over it in the meetings. And I would say I had not asked this previously, but if anything unusual occurs between meetings, we could certainly call a special meeting. Dr. Palm, is that your understanding and appropriate from your perspective?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. I'd like to thank the chair for giving their internal perspective on things based on her experience. That does help. But in terms of your statement relative to basically we just didn't do a good job of projecting, are those numbers created in conjunction with SCHEV, or does SCHEV just accept what we send with, as long as it's not out of the ordinary or something extraordinary or too low or whatever? I assume we're getting some feedback from them.
No, not so much as my experience, Dr. Palm.
Yeah, so
So
we
we should just lowball, right?
and again, you're right. We could, but even in talking to the Chev staff, they indicate we just haven't done a good job of projecting. What I would tell you though, like I said before, is that we want to push ourselves, but we do not want to be over ambitious. And so so it's that fine level
Right.
of really setting realistic expectations and goals and pushing that to a different level versus and again, I think we did the best we could back in 2016 17 in projecting these, but again, not having the technology creates an issue
Right.
with regards to
Sure.
doing it.
And I'm glad we're correcting that. So there's really no incentive to be aggressive.
Well, there is not. And I would say back in the day, I don't know if you all remember Gene Trani, who was the president of VCU for 19 years, I think. He was one of the architects of the financial and administrative standards and academic standards. And with the state, and he wanted to show that VCU was going to do all the things, and they failed miserably because they did these stretch and aggressive goals. In terms of lowballing, we never did that again. But in terms of lowballing, you don't really want to do that either. I think Chev wants you to be as realistic as possible, because Chev, for their Virginia Plan for Higher Education, for their reports and so forth, they're projecting. So they take all of our exactly.
Yes.
They take all the institutions' projections, and then they make their projection, and
Sure.
they don't modify it particularly. So they just want us to be as realistic as possible. I think where you do your stretch goals would be in a strategic plan, that sort of thing, an enrollment plan, but not in these at all. You just want to be as realistic as possible.
Thank you. And I agree I appreciate that. But the other thing is that on most of these that we didn't meet, not only did we not meet the Chev goal, but we actually declined on most of them in absolute numbers. So
Yeah.
even if we did a better job of projecting, we still declined on a lot of it. And then a lot of it has to do with enrollment. So it just keeps rolling and rolling, no pun intended. So because it's not as though we're saying 95% of the students on campus, but based on 95% of the projections. So it just keeps penalizing you over and over and over again. Okay.
Yes.
And certainly I understand all this and I appreciate this, but from the community perspective, from the alumni perspective and all, the optics are not positive. And that's one of the things we need to be concerned about too, because we are the lowest performing, if you want to say it, based on performance of all of the colleges that surveyed and monitored, we have probably the lowest performance in terms of the number not met. So I want to make sure that we get out ahead of the message, control the message, as opposed to trying to defend something. So I'm sure that communications is cognizant of that, and hopefully we can explain this and in such a way that it doesn't impact alumni confidence, parent confidence. So otherwise, the enrollment will continue to go down, so it can continue to roll and roll again. But also, just in terms of as chair of the Institutional Advancement Committee.
Mr. Richardson, I apologize. I've gotten a note that our live stream has stopped, and so I need to check with our legal counsel and see if we can continue or if we need to pause.
Oh, they just want to cut me off.
No.
Nice tool we have there.
So.
Yeah, Madam Chair, this is Deb Love. The meeting does need to stop until we can restore that communication.
Okay. All right. So we will pause, and Mr. Richardson, we will pick up with you as soon as we hear that we are back live.
Okay, I'm going to take a 2-second break. Thank you.
Everybody, take a bio break if you'd like right now. It would be a good time.
Indeed. Thank you. And mute your phones while you're doing it. Bye.